Hey everyone, welcome back to our Joshua chapter 7 study today. If you want the free PDF, you can download it on the website as always. I had something to say and I can't remember what it was, so let's just jump into the study. Joshua chapter 7, when did the events of this chapter happen? Oh, I remember what it was. In regards to the timeline, to the when section, I just want to mention that there's a lot of different ideas. There's a ton of debate about when these events took place exactly in history. Dates move, 100 years or so, 50 years this way, 50 years that way. There's really educated people who place these events 50 years earlier, and then there's really educated people who place these events 50 years later. And so just know that I'm not a scholar in this. I'm doing the best that I can to date these as well as I can, but there's a lot of other good opinions out there, and I'd encourage you to read them. So for this chapter, Joshua chapter 7, we're looking at approximately 1450 BC. That's my roundabout date for when the Israelites entered the Promised Land and began the conquest. As far as our characters, we've got two. We've got Joshua, who's the leader of the Israelites. We've been talking about him for several chapters. We've also got one character who's somewhat unique to this chapter, and that is Achan. Achan was a man from the tribe of Judah, from the family of the Zerahites, and the household of Zabdi. Achan disobeyed God, and he caused 36 of his fellow Israelites to be killed. We'll talk about him in the outline. Now let's take a quick glance down at our map. Chapter 7 centers around the city of Ai, which was not a very big place. And it is a weird name, I know, Ai. All I can think of now is artificial intelligence. But the city of Ai is described as being near Bethaven, east of Bethel. Now let's jump into our outline. I've got this broken down into two sections. The Israelites have been doing a lot of winning lately, but in this chapter they're going to suffer a defeat. Verses 1 through 9, the Israelites are defeated at Ai. In Joshua chapter 6, God forbade the Israelites from taking any of the spoil from the city of Jericho. All of it was to be devoted to destruction. You remember that? But what we find out in this chapter is that one of the Israelites disobeyed. And his disobedience brought grave consequences on the camp of Israel. So Joshua wanted to go up and to defeat the city of Ai. He sent a small force of men, about 3,000 men, to fight against the city, but they were routed and 36 men were killed. Now Joshua was distraught by this, and he cried out to the Lord, asking him why the Lord hadn't given him victory, considering the Lord had promised to help their military. God is going to answer Joshua in the final section of this chapter, verses 10 through 26. Achan's sin is discovered. So God told Joshua that the reason that he had lost the battle at Ai was because one of the Israelites had disobeyed and taken the forbidden spoils from the city of Jericho. Now God gave Joshua a way of discovering who the culprit was. In the morning, Joshua was to call all of the tribes of Israel to him, all of the people, and he was supposed to select one of the tribes by lot. Lot was a method of random selection, kind of like rolling dice or drawing straws. But in this case, God was going to guide the process to lead Joshua to the individual who had broken the law. So of the tribes, one was supposed to be selected by lot. When a tribe was selected, the next a family was to be selected by lot, and then a household, and then an individual was to be identified. And as I mentioned, God would providentially guide the selection process so that Joshua found the individual responsible. Now, the next morning, Joshua did exactly as the Lord commanded him, and the lot selected a man named Achan from the tribe of Judah. When confronted, Achan didn't try to hide his sin. He confessed to Joshua that when he was in Jericho, he saw a beautiful robe, some silver, and a bar of gold, and he coveted them. Men were sent to Achan's tent, and the items were discovered buried underneath of his tent in the ground. As punishment, the punishment was severe, which I think it should have been because 36 people lost their lives because of this. Achan and his household were stoned, and then all of his household was burned at a place called the Valley of Achor. And so when this was done, the anger of the Lord abated, and now we're finally ready for the Israelites to go up and actually get a victory at Ai, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. So what do we take away in application from the story of Achan? I think one thing that we can take away is that there are no secret sins. Nothing is hidden from God. Even in hundreds of thousands of people, Achan was just one man, and yet God knew exactly what Achan had done. You may be able to hide things, sins, from your neighbors, from your friends, from people that you go to church with, but you can be assured that everything is going to be exposed in the end. So, what do you have buried in your tent? It's better to confess your sin now and to seek the forgiveness of God and receive the forgiveness of God that He's promised now, rather than face the, quote, fierceness of His anger, as it's described in this chapter, when we're called into judgment on the final day.